Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and on today's episode of CN Unit Analysis, we are going to be taking a look at our first ever 5-star Remembrance DPS Aglaea, right? So I'm pretty sure you guys have played here for the past couple of days. By the time this video goes up, there's been quite a lot of controversy surrounding her placement in the meta, why is she only tier 2 in pure fiction, etc, etc. So we are going to be taking a look at what the CN community is going to be thinking about her. So a brief summary of how she is like as a unit is essentially making use of her ultimate to use a joint attack and attacking with her Garmentmaker. She is essentially not going to be dealing almost any forms of damage outside of the ultimate stage. So if you are going to face into energy issues, which can be circumvented by either using Sunday, Robin, Huan Huan, or future energy units that we're going to be getting, then we are going to be seeing a very drastic damage drop off, right? The main form of targeting is going to be extremely strong against single as well as dual targeting, somewhat like a destruction. Against a mob content, it is gonna be on average, right? So I did find myself, however, having a decent performance with her, at least in this current cycle of pure fiction, where she still could essentially perform not too shabbily, especially if you could still run her with the Sunday, Robin, as well as Huo team, right? Because Garmentmaker herself, she can actually also get rid of the mobs independently without using the drone attacks. If you still want to get a 30,000 clear, I believe it's still pretty doable, but 40,000, it might not be as diabolical as compared to some of the other AoE content, right? So for Aglaea's value as a version 3 DPS, in fact, the very first batch of version 3 DPS alongside D Herta, she is gonna be fine on a multiplier perspective, but she is not gonna be as universal when it comes to her team building compositions, right? So if you don't really have access to the 5-star units such as Sunday, Robin, and you only can run Aglaea with 4-star units such as, for example, Ting Yun, Remembrance Trailblazer, Gallagher, her performance is going to fall off quite substantially as compared to units like D Herta. But under the right scenarios with the right units, then it is going to be able to perform exceptionally well because the synergy between the current best slot team is just going to be super good, right? The main concern is mainly still going to be tied towards the energy regeneration cost. This is also somewhat similar to Boot Hill as well as Yun Li in a sense, not to say that their numbers are bad, but that it is going to be highly dependent on the environment as well for these units, right? So for example, Boot Hill, he's gonna need warm-up time to trigger his pocket trick shots, but this has been alleviated with the introduction of Fugue so that you can instantly get basically 3 stacks the moment you one-shot mob. And then for Yun Li, she's gonna be a unit that, you know, depending on how frequently the enemy will hit you in order to trigger the enhanced counter. For an E0 Aglaea, the biggest concern for her right now is gonna be how frequently can she fill up this energy regeneration gap, especially if you do not unlock the Eidolon 1, alright? Or if you do not play her Sunday. At an E0 perspective, you essentially don't really have any other way to maintain 100% ultimate uptime aside from Sunday plus Huo. If you do not have any of these units, you are most likely going to be running into energy issues unless we are going to be arguing against an environment where the enemy hits you very frequently or if you're able to get a lot of kills. Other than that, you are going to be definitely running out of the ultimate. Then compared to the 4-star counterparts like Ting Yun and R-star, the speed drop off, the energy regeneration drop off is just gonna be a lot worse compared to the 5-star alternatives, right? Considering that Aglaea is gonna be released at a pretty interesting spot, which is the unit after is gonna be Tribi, which is our very first version 3 Harmony support, and then the units before her, we quite literally have 2 different crit DPS, lightning crit DPS, being the Aircron as well as Jingyuan. So at this current baseline, Aglaea is not really a must pull by any means whatsoever, right? So after this banner, we are also going to be introducing to more and more version 3 units such as Mighty as well as Tribi, or maybe even future units that might be coming out such as Castries, right? So you can kind of see her placement similar to our previous version 2 DPSs like Boot Hill as well as Black Swan. So as a version 3 DPS, second half unit with Lightning Elemental, for a comparison with Jingyuan, they believe that at least she's definitely going to be stronger than that, but the thing is, her competition is not exactly with Jingyuan, but more so with future Remembrance DPS such as Castries, because we have seen a teaser from the animation, she quite literally summons a goddamn dragon, right? So although she is going to be strong enough for a version 3 DPS, but from a meta or power level perspective, it is going to be a little bit mixed because she needs a lot of pieces to be there in order to fulfill this potential. And if you are going to be missing these pieces, then Aglaea's standing is definitely going to be impacted. So if you're wondering whether or not she should be pulling for Aglaea, if you already have a Sunday, Robin, as well as Huo, and you don't mind spending the extra strategies, just kind of play with Aglaea, before the future Remembrance DPS come out, because keep in mind, version 3.1 is gonna be a Harmony support as well as a Destruction Imaginary, right? So if you guys want to, you could just pick up the Aglaea and just see how she performs, right? As of this current environment, using this setup, the multipliers are fine, the speed is extremely fast, and she is also one of the easiest units to obtain a 0 cycle at this current moment, especially with a sustain like Huo, because she cycles extremely quickly, and so far, even though the buffs are not tailored to her in Memory of Chaos, she's still able to perform a drastic damage, right? So for the unfortunate thing with Aglaea is that she's definitely going to be stronger compared to like our version 1 or even version 2 DPS, but if you want to compare to the future version 3 DPS, she might be in a little bit of an awkward position, right? It's like can't really go up, can't really go down, a little bit in this rock and a hard place, right? So the most impactful Eidolon that if you really want to play Aglaea, it would be extremely recommended to pull for Aglaea's E1, because it almost more or less fixes her energy problems entirely, and you're going to be able to very easily maintain this ultimate uptime, which I've mentioned in my earlier access is going to be extremely crucial to get this damage up. If you guys do not want to pull for her E1, and if you don't want to have Sunday, then you can kind of just see what future characters are going to be holding, because as of this current moment, we also have a couple of pieces that Aglaea could really require. For example, Robin, even though she has a lot of attack and Robin's attack doesn't really benefit her that much, the group AoE as well as the additional damage which can be triggered twice by joint attack is going to be very valuable, and there are very little substitutes aside from Robin, right? If you do not have Robin, technically if you want to use Rame, it's also fine, because for Aglaea, her speed is extremely fast, but because Rame's buffs are going to be tied to Rame herself, it is not going to face a situation where she's going to run out of the buffs. For example, like units like Bronya, Sparkle, or even Tingyun, right? If you really do not have Rame, then even Remembrance MC can be considered, but keep in mind that this buff out time is definitely going to face a little bit of an issue, namely going to be main support, right? And as for Sunday's placement with Aglaea, unless a future version 3 support can kind of fill up this gap, which is going to be combining both action value advance as well as energy regeneration, then it's really hard to find a substitute for Sunday, right? Not only does he give us a lot of energy, which is 70 energy, he also gives us action value advance. Keep in mind that his buff might not have 100% coverage because the skill doesn't last for the full 3 turns except for his ultimate, but this energy regeneration as well as the action value is going to be extremely important for Aglaea to maintain the ultimate uptime, right? So that is essentially going to be the summary for Aglaea's base kit. If you guys want to take a look at her tracers, her in-depth combat details, feel free to take a look at our early access, but I'm just going to jump right into the more advanced analysis for Aglaea. For the advanced analysis, she is going to be the fastest DPS in honkaistarrail at this current moment, and her attack frequency can be compared to units like our follow-up team comp, right? For her damage output, it's going to be very smooth during this ultimate stage. So for example, you want to compare units like Aircron or even Facial, their damage comes in bursts whenever you unlock their ultimates. Whereas for Aglaea, every single time she uses her enhanced attack, which is going to be the joint attack, she's going to be able to output a consistent number of damage as long as you remain in this ultimate form, right? So you're going to have extremely high attack frequency as well as an area of effect of 3 targeting, somewhat similar to Destruction. So it's going to be very nice against these kind of mobs, especially if they keep spawning, right? Keeping in mind that because she goes so frequently, even though her personal multiplier is not going to be as high, the total multiplier that she's able to output within a single wave is going to be one of, if not the highest that we have in honkaistarrail right now. So especially for like, a lot of people that have seen my testing with Aglaea for the past couple of days, a lot of people are saying like she's really mid because like, the damage per screenshot, a singular damage instance is not that high, therefore she's mid. These people are just a little bit misguided because the number of frequency you can deal with this is actually a lot more compared to our units, such as our previous version 2 DPS. So if you are able to maintain 100% ultimate uptime using this exact setup, then a single target DPR is gonna be quite literally 1 million, which is roughly around the same caliber, if not even higher than Facial for a single target. So against group targets, Aglaea is definitely gonna be able to outperform Facial because she does have the additional 2 targeting from the joint attack, right? But the problem with moving fast, aside from the ultimate, is that the turn buffs for Aglaea is gonna run out very fast. So namely, Bronya's ultimate, Sparkle's ultimate, or even like these kind of Harmony support skills, they are not able to achieve a 100% buff coverage because nobody is gonna be expecting Aglaea to hit close to even 300 speed in battle. So quite literally, she can almost move 3 times before your next Harmony support can buff her, which means that by the time it reaches a 3rd or 2nd turn, the buffs are more or less gonna be out, right? So for buffers such as Rame as well as Robin, these are gonna be not that impacted because their buffs are ultimately tied to their own turn, and for Sunday, it's only gonna be his ultimate, so his skill as well as the Sacridos and Light Cone, it is gonna be impacted, right? So do keep that in mind when you're factoring the buff up times. So the real question with Aglaea is not really her speed tuning, it is more so towards this 350 350 cost ultimate. Most of the kit at this baseline E0, it is only gonna be able to refund you with 20 energy. So this ultimate does have a base speed of 100. So essentially, before the ultimate expires or this ultimate state expires, you want to achieve as many actions as possible with Aglaea, either with action value buffers such as Sunday, such as Bronya, or using some kind of other means such as Ego, 4-piece, DDD, all that kind of stuff in order to make her fill up the gaps and try to reach back up to this 350 energy so that the ultimate does not get interrupted, right? Whether or not she interrupts this ultimate is going to have a huge impact on the total damage output. So in the event that you are lacking a little bit of energy, you can still kind of circumvent this with a Sunday ultimate, but if you're losing out your ultimate state and you're only at like halfway mark, then it is going to take a very, very long time for Aglaea to get into the ultimate state again. And at the same time, because the time it takes for Aglaea to build her stacks, it is also gonna be very, very slow because only her Garmentmaker can apply the speed stacks, this 1 out of 6 at the bottom left hand corner of your screen, right? Unless you unlock her E4. So in that event, if you were to actually lose the ultimate, not only do you have to rebuild back up to 6 stacks, you also lose the time you're gonna be getting for your speed, your joint attack, etc, etc. So how do we make use of this effectively to go the highest number of turns possible? So to put it very simply, the ultimate form has a base speed of 100, right? The counter is 100 speed. So as long as your Aglaea is at 300 speed, she can in fact move 3 times before the ultimate expires. That's quite literally how this speed tuning works. But even at a 270 speed with the Signature Light Cone, you already need roughly 10 speed subsets. So getting a 300 speed Aglaea, it is close to impossible from Relics alone, unless you're going to be able to access with like Rame, you're going to be access Dance, 4-piece Hacker Space, or even like E2 Robin, etc, etc. Of course, all these are not going to be that important to you, especially if you pull for the E1 Aglaea, because this E1 Aglaea, it completely fixes up the energy regen issue. So as of this current point, if you do get this E1, she can essentially fulfill this 350 energy cost ultimate by herself, even without the help of a lot of these other factors such as Sunday or even Ho-Ho. So for now, the biggest problem with Aglaea is still fundamentally tied to Garmentmaker. So what exactly is wrong with Garmentmaker? Which is the moment you are going to be using this joint attack with the ultimate, right? Both of them are going to be combined, but if your Garmentmaker dies in battle, either prematurely or you didn't manage it properly, then she's also going to be exiting the ultimate stage. Now keep in mind, I have actually not experienced this myself where the enemy actually snipes the Garmentmaker, but if you are going to be up against units that has a very, very high frequency of attack, such as Hule in the future, right? And then Garmentmaker, it is not really that much tankier compared to a memosprite like Mimi, right? So for now, it is not that bad that Garmentmaker can survive, but if you do lose Garmentmaker during Aglaea's ultimate, it is gonna be very, very bad, and basically nobody can save this, right? And one good thing is that since we don't really consume that much skill point with Aglaea, during the ultimate stage, her enhanced attack doesn't take any skill points, so you can essentially perma spam Huan's skill onto the Garmentmaker to make sure that bro does not die, right? So as of this current point, if we are up against a boss that has an extremely, extremely high single target burst damage and somehow bro just snipes Garmentmaker, then Aglaea's kit is gonna crumble. Even if you have Sunday, even if you have E1, nothing is gonna save this unless you can make sure that Garmentmaker survives that. So far, I haven't seen this scenario yet, but in the future, who knows what kind of enemies are gonna be coming out in the future. So with all that established, the most ideal rotation for Aglaea is to make sure that Aglaea never loses the ultimate and only does the joint attack completely unreliant on skill points, and use all of these additional skill points and give them to teammates like Sunday, Huo, or even Robin to cast a skill, right? So that you want to kind of rotate this and spam this as much as possible to essentially maintain the highest uptime, because for example, Huo's ultimate gives the entire team energy. The more Sunday can cast his skill, the more energy he himself also get, and then Robin herself can also cast a skill just to squeeze out an additional emergency ultimate, right? Therefore, Huo specifically, you can also consider running her with post-up conversation just for the additional energy regeneration. In the future, we kind of want to see how Tribi is going to be able to perform with us. Can she actually replace Robin in this setup? And then we'll kind of take a look at it when she's actually out, right? So we do establish that at E0, Aglaea's biggest problem is going to be energy regeneration, and E1 essentially completely fixes this kit. If you want to hear a more blunt statement, so this is going to super out, so this is a very blunt statement, is that Aglaea without the E1 is like a negative E1. Yep, so this is quite literally negative E1 if you do not get Aglaea's E1, and only after getting Aglaea's E1 can you kind of consider her as an E0 base kit. That is how blunt they are kind of looking at this, and because this is also factoring in, we are not considering Garmentmaker getting sniped by a future boss that can, maybe deal tremendous high single target damage, and when is not going to be able to save him because you are not running Fusion, then this is going to be extremely problematic, and even E1 cannot save us from this situation, right? So it is extremely recommended to get an E1 Ezreal Aglaea, especially if you guys do not have Sunday, to try to future-proof her a little bit more compared to the other DPS, right? So now coming into the team building components, honestly, there's really not a lot of wiggle room here. So you can see that Aglaea herself, she has some of these different pointers. She needs a lot of energy regeneration. She doesn't really need that many skill points, and she needs some kind of action value advances in order to give her the additional turn, right? So as of this current point, her best in slot team, we've already discussed this extensively. It is going to be Sunday, Robin, as well as Huo. Team-wide energy regeneration from Huo. Sunday giving us the Aglaea's buffs, giving the coverage, pulling up the memosprite, giving her the energy regeneration, and then Robin is there to trigger the additional physical damage instance, which is triggered twice by Aglaea's joint attack. So this entire team, it is pretty much seamless. For Huo specifically, Quid Pro Quo doesn't matter that much because it's only like 16 energy out of 250. So getting the post-op conversation to increase Huo's ultimate duration or ultimate uptime, it is going to be more preferred, right? And then for Huo's 2-piece, it is recommended to get some energy regeneration 2-piece, such as Luxaka or the 2-piece fallback, kind of similar to Sunday as well. For Sunday, it is really important, not really for the damage buff, but just to make sure that Aglaea doesn't lose this ultimate, because if she loses it, it's going to be very bad. So the buff coverage is going to be secondary compared to Aglaea's ultimate uptime, right? Keeping in mind that Sunday's ultimate is percentage, it is going to be a whopping 70 energy, which is quite literally higher than Tini's 60 energy. Then finally, Robin's buff, it covers for the entire team. You're not tied to Aglaea's speed, you're going to get 100% uptime. The additional damage also triggers twice for the joint attack, right? This is also inclusive of Huo. And if you want to add a signature like in Robin and you have a very high attack, then you can run a physical damage sphere to increase our physical damage even further whenever Aglaea does her joint attack. Because keep in mind, Aglaea already has a shit ton of attack, so she might not need the attack buff that much from Robin. Aside from Robin, you can consider her with Rame or even Remembrance Trailblazer. They're all kind of okay, but what you're lacking here is not really the rotations for Aglaea, but it's more so the damage output. So lacking the rotations, it is not that bad. You can kind of just get used to the lower damage numbers, especially if you do not have Robin. If you do not have Huo, other sustains like Loa Chao Gallagher, they are also not going to be that bad because they can still kind of run our abundant sustains such as Quid Pro Quo, Shared Feelings, or even their post-out conversation, right? For the Sunday, unfortunately, there is essentially no good substitutes for Sunday. The action very advanced for both herself, the memosprite, the energy generation, as well as the additional turn. It is just simply a little bit too much to replace. So as of this current point, we also come to the very interesting topic, which is how exactly should you be speed tuning your Aglaea? Now, I did mention that we have seen this Reddit thread where people are saying that you shouldn't tie your Aglaea to 2 times speed. Unfortunately, that is wrong because as of this current point of time, the best in slot speed rotation is still going to be Aglaea acting twice before Sunday, which is the original 270/135 speed that I proposed to you in my early access server. This is gonna give us the highest damage possible setup, and it has also been confirmed by the CN community. But one important thing to note is that if you were to use this setup, but you're gonna face a situation where the ultimate is gonna run out, then it wouldn't be recommended to run this setup. You don't really face this problem if you run this with the best in slot team, like with Huo as well as Robin. But if you do run into a scenario where your ultimate is running out earlier than expected, then it would not be recommended to run this setup and just give your Sunday a faster speed so that Bro can actually cast his ultimate a little bit faster and give Aglaea the ultimate uptime needed. At this point, the most important stat for Aglaea is gonna be making sure that this ultimate lasts throughout the entire battle. If you can already achieve this, then the highest damage possible is going to be running the 2 times speed Aglaea compared to Sunday. So a way that you can kind of increase Sunday's movements is going to be either with Dance, giving him more than 159 speed, because if you were to use this specific setup, you can actually lead to a scenario something like this. So Aglaea, Sunday, then Aglaea moves 3 times because we do have the power of Dance, and one more action we can still pull up one more time right before Robin's concerto ends, right? So this is going to be an alternative if you are going to be facing a situation where you're running out of the ultimate. If you already have no problem with the ultimate uptime and you can get the signature light cone and you are able to fulfill this 270 speed and above, then running the 2 times speed rotation for Aglaea is going to be highly recommended. So hopefully this clears up the question as to which is the best optimal speed tuning, which once again goes back to my own video. Highest possible damage, 2 times Aglaea with 1 time Sunday. If you cannot have an ultimate uptime using this speed threshold, whether is it because you didn't pull for the signature light cone, whether it's you're running out of energy, then just go for a Sunday as fast as possible and bring down Aglaea's speed, because at that point, whatever speed Aglaea runs doesn't change anything. You're essentially going to be the same exact unit, right? So that is pretty much going to be it. If you really do not have Sunday, then you can run this with Remembrance Trailblazer, because technically true damage is still not that bad, but just expect that the performance is going to be dropping quite a little bit, right? You're not going to have the full buff coverage, you're not going to have the energy generation, but you do have quite a bit of action value advance, as well as the buffs that Mimi provide. It is honestly very, very strong as well, right? And this buff, the true damage buff, it is also going to be applied to Garmentmaker on top of Aglaea. It's just that Garmentmaker can't be put up. Aside from Huan, all the other sustains, they are not going to be as synergistic as compared to Huan, because she's really the only unit that can give us the highest amount of energy regeneration. If you do not have her, Fusion or Ventrine, they can both kind of be ran. Fusion is going to be pretty good, especially if you're up against potential one-shot scenarios, so they can prevent your Garmentmaker from getting sniped by the enemy mob, right? And then for Ventrine, one downside is that his shield only lasts for 3 turns, and because Aglaea moves so quickly, it might run into a situation where Aglaea's shield actually runs out, and you're not going to be able to get this buff onto Aglaea. So at this current point of time, if you can, it is highly recommended to get at least either Sunday or at least Huo, even if you do have E1 Aglaea, because if you do play with E1 Aglaea but you have no Sunday or no Huo, you also might potentially run into a situation where you run out of the ultimate buff, right? Specifically because the energy value they bring is simply too high, right? But if you're in a scenario where you can't give her any of the 5-star supports, right? Your Rame is getting ran by Super Break, your Sunday is given to de-hurt her, your Baba is given to follow up DPS, your Huo got stolen by DOT, or any of these scenarios, and you can only give Aglaea a 4-star, and you really have no other units to pull unless you're a brand new player that just started playing this game and you missed out on de-hurt her, then it is very, very unrecommended, right? It is highly not recommended to pull for Aglaea in this scenario where she loses all of the 5-star support options, right? A pure 4-star team comp of Aglaea, it is gonna be extremely, extremely uncomfortable, right? So that is pretty much gonna be it for Aglaea's analysis. And jumping into how we build Aglaea, Signature Light Cone followed by the Gacha Light Cone followed by the Battle Pass, etc. I'm just going to skip through this because we've already seen what they do with the base speed, so you can kind of see the differential over here. 100% for the signature weapon. At S5, Battle Pass Light Cone is going to be 82.53, then S5 Genius is going to be at 77.72. Now the main difference why the Light Cone has such a disparity of almost 20% to the next alternative is mainly because of the base speed, because Signature Light Cone is essentially the only Light Cone we have right now that can actually help Aglaea achieve the 270 base, which means that she can run the 2x speed plus Sunday setup, assuming that you do not run the ultimate, which means that for almost every single scenario, this is gonna allow us to deal a much higher damage output, right? As of this current moment, we also don't really have a lot of alternatives, but between E1 or S1, E1 is still a lot more preferable for Aglaea compared to the signature weapon, because in the future, who knows what Remembrance Light Cone is going to come out, right? The rotation from the energy is simply way too important to give up. You can run E1 and just run the face out Light Cone, and you are still going to be able to be performing a lot better, unless you're somebody that's prioritizing on 0 cycles, then maybe that would be fine, right? So that is going to be that. So for the relic portion, unfortunately, Garmentmaker is not going to be able to get any of the bars for all of our relics, right? Rooted Arena, Glamorph, Banana, as well as Master Tier, none of these effects can be applied to Garmentmaker. They are strictly for the wearer themselves, right? Then 4-piece Triumphant is pretty much going to be the best in slot, no questions asked whatsoever. And then if you do not have a Triumphant, then running 4-piece Master Tier is not too shabby. Then for the 2-piece, any of these, just choose the one with the highest substats in terms of speed and crit ratio, then that's going to be completely fine. Keep in mind that if you are going to be running Sunday with Aglaea, do not overcap on your crit rate, because that's going to be another 20% additional crit, right? So aside from that, just run the one with the highest available substats, namely hitting your speed thresholds. Then for main stats, crit rate main stat, because you don't really have a lot of crit rate, speed boots, elemental damage sphere, as well as energy regeneration rope. Now for the feed, I did mention that you can in fact run attack boots, especially if you're not going to be running the 2x speed, 1x speed Aglaea and Sunday combination. And then for the energy regeneration rope, I have found myself personally that I could run attack percentage on Aglaea, especially if I'm trying to achieve a 0 or 1 cycle, because I noticed that I'm still not really facing the energy problems yet. But I do believe that if you're using Aglaea for content that is going to extend for a lot of cycles, you're going to be losing ultimate, then energy regeneration is going to be highly recommended, right? So attack percentage is only if you know what you're doing, essentially. And now jumping into the Eidolons, I'm just gonna skip all through this. You can kind of see the effects from the early access review yourself, but these are gonna be the benefits from the Eidolon. So Eidolon is gonna be around 26.5%, E2 at 19.1%, assuming that we can't really stack it that much. If you do have a E1 Sunday, this actually does go up by quite a drastic amount, and then E4 is at 10%, and E6 is gonna be at 33%, right? So pretty normal DPS Eidolon so far. E1 is gonna be the one that changes the most because we are able to impact our rotations. So whether on this 27.5%, it will depend if you are impacted by Aglaea's ultimate uptime. So if you are running out of the ultimate, this E1 will probably give you a much higher damage percentage. But if you are not running out of the ultimate compared to E1 and E0, then the additional 15% vulnerability is not gonna lead to a 26.5% final damage increase. So with that, we have come to the end of Aglaea's CN unit analysis. Generally speaking, between this and D Herta has a much lower floor when it comes to accessibility, and for Aglaea, if you do not have any of the pieces or the units required to make her work, then she's not gonna be feeling as diabolical as compared to D Herta, right? So with that, we have come to the end of Aglaea's CN unit analysis. Well, today is gonna be energy. Join Twitch, join YouTube, join Discord, join Twitter, all of us. I will see you guys next time. Take care.